Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video episode on ForgottenWeapons.com. Today we're taking a look at another early American bolt-action rifle. This is a Remington-Keene, which is interesting in that it is a bolt-action and it has a tube magazine that looks very much like an early lever gun. So this was invented or developed by a guy named John W. Keene, and about 5,000 of them were made in total by the Remington Company. Remington and Winchester both were fairly heavily involved with a lot of the early bolt-action trials guns. Production on these started in 1880. The Navy actually bought some for testing, which they ultimately, like many of these guns, decided they weren't really big fans of. The biggest government sale was actually to the Department of the Interior, where a lot of these were used by Bureau of Indian Affairs, or there's a different name for it at the time, but Indian agents were issued these rifles to carry. Ultimately, the Navy preferred, while they weren't huge fans of any of the bolt-action guns, they preferred the Remington Lee and the Winchester Hotchkiss designs. But these particular guns actually did get used all the way up until 1878 and 1888 on the USS Michigan and the USS Trenton. Now, looking at the operation, one thing that one would think endear this to the military is the fact that it does have a hammer. Now, it's actually not a hammer. It is a hammer-shaped cocking piece, basically, that's attached to the end of the bolt. So, all right, so let's look at going ahead and opening the action on the Remington-Keene. It's a bolt action, so you lift up, pull back. There are locking lugs at the rear, which we'll show you in a moment. And then there's a cartridge elevator or lifter down in the bottom. When I pull the bolt fully backwards, that lifter pivots up. This is actually very similar to the French Lebel rifle. They both have two magazines under the barrel, and they both work kind of like this. So once there's a cartridge now sitting on this lifter platform, I can push the bolt forward. You hear the lifter snap back down, and a new cartridge is released onto the lifter. So then I lock the bolt, I can fire, and then when I go ahead and open the bolt for the next round, we'll eject the empty case, and the next one, now sitting on that lifter, will come up. Now, if we take a look at the bolt, you can see that this is not actually a hammer. It is a striker piece made to look like a hammer so that the Army would be comfortable with it. Remington-Keene here is another example of one of the early bolt actions that was trialed by the U.S. military and then ultimately rejected. We wouldn't have a U.S. military bolt action rifle until the Krag Jorgensen was ultimately adopted in the 1890s. So these are fairly rare today. Like I said, about 5,000 of them were made. The really rare ones to find are the ones that would be either Navy marked or interior marked for Indian agents. I'd like to thank Rock Island Auction for letting us come out and take a look at this among many of their other guns. And tune back in to ForgottenWeapons.com for more interesting early bolt action designs.